Do you even realize how lucky you are to be alive right now? To exist at a time where you get to experience one of the biggest failures in marketing ever. Cracker Barrel announced they're scrapping their plans to rebrand the franchise after the backlash it received. This plan didn't even last 2 full weeks. My channel probably could have survived longer milking the absurdity of the situation compared to how long the brand lasted after making the switch. This barely squeaked by a week of life, and life is a term I'm using very loosely because this was dead on arrival. It was a change nobody asked for, and the only thing it ensured was that the people who were fond of the franchise wouldn't be coming back.
The Cracker Barrel announcing it's changing the logo back after this rebrand. And I know there was a lot of outrage around this as Cracker Barrel found itself at odds with its fans after removing Uncle Herschel from its logo. The company unveiled its revamped text-only design, sparking backlash and sinking its stock price. The chain also redesigned the interior of its restaurants, ditching some of that American aesthetic and replacing it with a slick, modern motif.
I was initially hesitant on even making an update to this situation because 1, I didn't want to make 2 back-to-back video analysis, and 2, it was only Fox News talking about it when I first learned about their plans to abandon this rebrand. But I guess every other media source was just coping with the idea that it was all a lie, but it is the truth. Cracker Barrel is now just not going to make any changes to the franchise from what it seems like. And I have no doubt this is as a result of their stocks. They were on track to losing $150 million before putting the kibosh on this, so I'm not surprised that they scrapped, because it was a stupid idea to begin with, because this whole modernizing Cracker Barrel conflicts with the ideology the brand was built upon. You can't remain nostalgic while modernize. You can't preach something simple while keeping up with the trends. Those things clash, and it's as simple as that. I guess their initial statement that it was just backlash from a vocal minority turned out to not be the whole truth. Shocking. They tried the denial approach at first rather than just admitting they f***ed up. But I guess once they saw their stocks weren't recovering at all, they eventually conceded. Which isn't a surprise. You hit them where it hurts, eventually they'll listen. But what is surprising is the fact that the CEO didn't commit to this idea. Like, she was really fond of it, so I thought she would at least try to see how long she could ride it out. Take for example when HBO Max rebranded to just Max. They committed for at least 2 full years before they eventually just went back to calling themselves HBO Max, which was another really stupid rebrand because it takes a name everyone's familiar with and just simplifies it so now nobody knows what the hell you're even talking about. It's not like Cracker Barrel was changing their name, but they changed its entire identity. And I guarantee when you go inside of Cracker Barrel, it'll feel like something completely different. Which was a contradiction to what the CEO initially said about how nothing was going to change. How the Cracker Barrel everyone knew and loved wasn't going to change. Even though they were planning to pretty much change everything and modernizing it, a restaurant that's built on nostalgia. I want to make it clear, I'm not opposed to change. In fact, I think change is a necessity in order for companies and brands to evolve. Needless to say, though, that change has to make sense. In the case of Cracker Barrel, this was a change nobody was asking for. Not fans of the franchise, at the very least. It was a change that was intended to basically change the entire ideology of the brand, thus turned away anybody that was a fan of it. The people they were trying to appeal to were never going to switch to this. Like, I don't think there were people that were just absolutely revolted by Cracker Barrel were suddenly going to start having family vacations to the restaurant. All it did was hurt the people who loved it. The whole idea of Cracker Barrel was nostalgia, and this rebrand was about getting rid of nostalgia. It just didn't make sense. If you want to change a company name, or I guess make small changes in general, that's totally fine. A change that I wasn't opposed to was updating their furniture. replacing the chairs specifically. You can do that without having to change your entire identity. You can absolutely find or make better chairs that fit with a theme of, I guess, an old country vibe. Another example is updating their menu or changing the menu. You can do that by bringing back old dishes people were fond of. Or I saw a report from some Cracker Barrel employees talking about how they don't actually make the food from scratch, which again is another contradiction from what the brand was built upon. You can start by actually doing that, actually making your food from scratch and bringing in menu items people were fond of that correlated to the entire brand's identity. A great example of a marketing push that I thought went super well for a company was when Domino's Pizza rebranded to just Domino's. They changed their name and logo, with the whole slogan being about how they're more than just pizza, which I think worked super well. Because even if people weren't suddenly going to start ordering their new menu items or something other than pizza, it delivered a clear message that corresponded to something the company was built upon and added onto it without changing that core detail. Plus, people were already calling it Domino's, so it's not like the name change was suddenly an inconvenience. An example of a rebrand that was so awful and still is to this date is when Elon Musk rebranded Twitter to X. Or tried to, at least, because almost 2 years later, still nobody calls Twitter X. They still call it Twitter, or the platform formerly known as Twitter. It was a stupid idea to change such an iconic thing and make it something that it wasn't, something people were never going to associate with. Here's another example of a change that I think went super well, was when Dan the Diamond Minecart changed his YouTube channel to just Dan TDM, because his fans were already calling him Dan TDM, and he was doing more than just Minecraft at that point. So it was a change that still held something that was nostalgic, but created this whole new presence and pushed his channel forward. That is still a really good idea of an entire YouTube rebrand, and I don't know why more companies don't follow that. Nobody was begging for anything different with Cracker Barrel. They weren't calling it anything else. They weren't making any catchy abbreviations. They weren't saying, ugh, I just wish I like Cracker Barrel, but I just wish it was something different. Nobody did that! It was a stupid idea, so it's not surprising that the consequences reflected this stupid decision. Like I said, I've never had a problem with Cracker Barrel or the whole idea of making changes. It's just the changes they were trying to make were stupid. Like, that's just full front. They were stupid. They had a good idea that unfortunately became a victim of this trend where companies just can't make small changes anymore. Anytime they want to do something different, they have to make it the sequel, which again is something nobody was asking for. Nobody wants the sequel to Cracker Barrel. They just want the Cracker Barrel they know and love to continue to be good. And that starts by updating your furniture, making sure the furniture just doesn't spontaneously combust, upholding your standards of making food from scratch, or even, adding some menu items that actually correlate to what your company was founded upon, nostalgia, or bringing back menu items people care about, instead of introducing these additional things nobody was asking for. There's a saying that I really think fits perfectly with Cracker Barrel: if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So yeah, I just had to give an update to this because I found it to be absolutely comical. Like, if I had to describe the marketing push for Cracker Barrel, it was the Concord of culinary disasters. I just wanted to talk about this, and that's really about it. So